Among Ubisoft's greatest surprises during E3 2017 was Beyond Good and Evil 2. First announced back in 2008, for the longest time, the game was in development limbo, but we are finally seeing it resurface with a brand new vision in 2017. A few days after E3 2017, creative director Michael Ansel finally showed off some early gameplay footage of the game, and I must say, even in its early stages, the game looks really cool and ambitious. The thing that Michael emphasized most in the gameplay demo was the sense of seamless scale. The presentation begins by showing an enormous 400 meters long mothership that seamlessly houses a smaller 20 meters long ship that seamlessly houses the player character. Michael compared this idea to Russian dolls, which starts with one big doll that houses a smaller doll that houses an even smaller doll, until you reach the smallest one. Applying that concept into Beyond Good and Evil 2, the player can explore the inside of their mothership on foot, then hop onto a smaller ship, exit the mothership, fly around for a bit, then hop out as the player character and fly around with the jetpack, and go anywhere they want with nary a loading screen. In practice, the seamlessness and scale of it all definitely looks damn impressive, and seeing things like the player character standing atop a giant statue of Ganesha that overlooks one of the game's major cities is truly a sight to behold. The demo only gets better as Michael pans the camera out to reveal not just the entire planet that the demo takes place in, but also neighboring planets as well. From there, he pans out even further to reveal that these clusters of planets are but mere dots in the grand scale of this solar system. Michael also highlighted the fact that on top of all that, Beyond Good and Evil 2 features a solar system simulation. He explained how smaller planets rotate around big planets, and how planets in this game simulate how they would behave in real life. So things like sunrises and sunsets in specific planets aren't pre-programmed events, but rather an effect of the solar system simulation. Zooming back into the planet, Michael shows how ships work in this game. Not only are they flexible and easy to maneuver wherever you are, they are also extremely fast, allowing players to cover a lot of terrain in a very short time. While you will need to work your way up and earn enough money to buy things like ships, it's good to know that once you get to that point, traveling to the various corners of a planet won't be a slow, arduous process. The demo then gets even cooler as it shows how you can use your ship to seamlessly launch yourself into space a la No Man's Sky. From there, players can seamlessly navigate to and enter other nearby planets, where they can then seamlessly explore its cities, landscapes, motherships, etc. Now, like many of you, the words No Man's Sky send goosebumps down my spine. While an impressive feat for an indie-level studio, the game ended up being a cesspool of broken promises. And although it did achieve creating a universe with literally billions of planets to explore, gameplay was so shallow, planets were devoid of meaningful life and content, and the over-reliance on procedurally generated content ended up being the game's Achilles heel. The game has billions of planets, sure, but what good does that do if they are all fundamentally the same, if they are no fun to explore after a while, and if there's nothing compelling in them? No Man's Sky was a game that simply went too big for its own good. It was less like playing a creative vision come to life, and more like playing a visual representation of an algorithm. Now, where No Man's Sky failed, I believe that Beyond Good and Evil 2 has the potential to succeed. While ideas such as seamless space traversal and the ability to explore entire planets do seem borrowed, there are some fundamental differences in this game's vision. Let's start with the fact that instead of dealing with billions of explorable planets, Beyond Good and Evil 2 intends to take a more focused approach by narrowing that number down to a handful of explorable planets. It is my understanding that the game will focus on being able to explore planets within one solar system, which already drastically narrows down the need to over-rely on procedural content. While Michael did confirm that aspects of Beyond Good and Evil 2 will be procedural due to its still massive scale, the focus on a handful of planets rather than millions means that they'll be able to implement a lot of handcrafted material as well. This means that unlike No Man's Sky, Beyond Good and Evil 2 has the potential to have a fleshed out story, fleshed out characters, thoughtfully conceived settings and locales, as well as compelling quests, tasks, missions for players to undertake. Just to give you some examples, creative director Michael Ansel described a number of scenarios during the post-E3 2017 gameplay demo. He talked about how early in the game, you could be doing a job delivering pizza or something, with the destination being an NPC's mothership. Once you seamlessly enter the ship and deliver the pizza, you can explore that ship, where you might find other NPCs who might give you some other side quests. He talked about how if you land on a mountaintop in one of the planets, you might find some monks living there, which may trigger another adventure. There was also mention of procedural landscape deformations in planets, one example being that meteorites might strike in certain parts of the planet, at which point companies might send out some slaves to collect any valuable resources from it. So unlike No Man's Sky, Beyond Good and Evil 2 won't just be a procedural simulation. Instead, they're gonna mix the procedural with a lot of handcrafted stuff that'll really flesh out this world, or universe, I should say. Michael Ansel is essentially promising that this is going to be a handcrafted game that's aided by procedural elements, rather than a procedural game aided by handcrafted elements. All the important aspects to a great game, things like a great world, story, characters, cities, towns, levels, these will all seemingly receive the attention and love of dedicated artists rather than being shat out by an algorithm. Beyond Good and Evil 2 is almost starting to sound like a foil to No Man's Sky, which I think is great. I should also point out that Beyond Good and Evil 2 sounds a lot like what Mass Effect Andromeda was initially supposed to be. If you've read Kotaku's investigative article on what happened behind the scenes, then you'll know that in its early stages, Andromeda was intended to have hundreds of explorable planets, most of them procedurally generated. The game was also originally intended to allow players to seamlessly hop in and out of planets and explore space with their ship. Basically, BioWare Montreal's goal was to make No Man's Sky, but with Mass Effect gameplay and story. But this idea turned out to be far too ambitious. They didn't know how to make the procedural content fun or how to blend it with a focused narrative, and they sat on this idea that they couldn't bring to life for too long. When they realized that the procedural stuff wouldn't work, they tried to narrow that number down to 30 handcrafted planets, but then that number quickly dwindled down to the handful that shipped with the final game. Along the way, ambitious ideas like seamless interstellar travel were also cut or couldn't be implemented in time. And long story short, they had to start from scratch and create a much more condensed version of their original plans in the last 18 months of development, which culminated to a rushed, disastrous launch. In the end, we never got that epic Mass Effect, which was supposed to make players feel like space explorers. And this is where Beyond Good and Evil 2 seemingly comes in. It seems to be on its way to deliver many of the things that the original concept of Andromeda couldn't. The developers seem to have a good grasp on how much of its content will be handcrafted and how much of it will be procedural, and how they'll be able to balance both aspects so the game still feels rich. They also seem to understand that hundreds of planets won't do players any good if they are no fun, so they're sticking to a handful instead and focusing on making those as good as possible. Most importantly, Michael Ansel showed us via a gameplay demo after E3 2017 that a lot of his ideas are in fact running and are possible in real time. These are tangible things and not just words being thrown around. We see that Russian doll analogy come to life, with a solar system inhabited by clusters of planets, which are inhabited by landscapes, cities, and ships, which are inhabited inhabited by people and the player character. The framework for what this game aims to be is all there, it seems, which is a fantastic sign early on. It also looks like they custom built their game creation tools to tailor to the type of game that Beyond Good and Evil 2 will be, whereas with something like Andromeda, EA forced BioWare Montreal to use the Frostbite engine, which wasn't built to handle an open-world RPG of that magnitude. Now, the Beyond Good and Evil 2 developers still have a long road ahead of them. Now that they've got the framework, they have to build a well-designed, well-built game around all that. The demo is impressive, but so far, all it's showing us is some systems, concepts, and ideas running in-engine. I wouldn't call any of what I saw an actual game. There are still many pieces that they have to put together. It's how they implement these systems, how they tie it into things like story, characters, combat, quests, level design, etc. that will define the quality of this game when it launches. And I'm not gonna lie, while I am optimistic about their approach with procedurally generated content and mixing that in with handcrafted content, I'm still concerned that they're going way too big here. Sometimes less is more, and the first Beyond Good and Evil game proved that in spades with its tight level design and small hub world. They are making an enormous leap by going from that to a No Man's Sky type of game where you can seamlessly traverse through entire planets and across space. And these giant planets will apparently feature a ton of handcrafted content. Like, that's a lot on one plate. And in going too big, I'm just afraid that Beyond Good and Evil 2 is shifting too far away from what made the first game so special. The first game wasn't about scale and all these simulations, it was more about tight gameplay and level design, combined with an intimate, vibrant world, story, and cast of characters. And I'm just afraid that by expanding on such a massive level, the second game will lose that tight, intimate aspect that is so important to the first game. All I'm saying is, I hope they know what they're doing. I hope they're not making a big game just for the sake of making a big game. I pray that the game offers enough compelling content to make up for all of that real estate. At the very least, Michael Ansel has a good track record with the first Beyond Good and Evil game, which many consider to be one of the best games of all time. It has a very passionate cult following, and for good reasons. It's also worth pointing out that Michael actually wanted to implement things like space travel and planet-wide exploration in the original game, but couldn't because of technological limitations. So with the second game, Michael Ansel will seemingly realize the full scope of his original vision, which is kind of exciting. Just hoping that he won't get too carried away and go too big. As No Man's Sky proved, volume doesn't necessarily equate to a good game. It's all about density and variety. All in all though, I am excited and optimistic for the potential of Beyond Good and Evil 2. It might just deliver a type of experience that No Man's Sky and Andromeda failed to deliver, all while carrying itself with a very unique flavor and identity. These are my thoughts anyway. That's it for this discussion video. Thank you for tuning in. If you enjoy my content, consider supporting me on Patreon so we can remain independent from third-party sponsorship and corporate interference. And to be further updated on all things gaming news, reviews, and discussions, stay tuned right here on Young Yeah. I'll see you guys next time. Young out.